What's going on, Dope fam? Hope you guys have been doing well. Today's video, we got some really nice updates. I want to keep you guys up to date with the charts. Of course, Bitcoin is still in that bullish wedge, but surprisingly, once again, we've made a significant new low on the fear and greed. So funny to me because Bitcoin is still sitting above 100k, still sitting above the previous low that we made on the 5th of November, but the fear and greed index has gone into the teens, 15 today, which is absolutely massive. I'm going to show you guys some updates when it comes to the charts and some important news as well I will be covering you guys is Aerodrome and Velodrome are actually merging. So I'll give you guys my opinion on what I think is going to happen with the other base native DEXs, because technically right now with this merge, Aerodrome is merging into Velodrome and will be called Aero, but the ramification of this is technically they aren't base native DEXs anymore. So the two base native DEXs technically right now is Alien Base and HYDX, which I haven't covered on my YouTube channel, but I have covered on my X. But without further ado, I'm Dope Oxide. I make content on YouTube, X, and CoinMarketCap, so be sure to follow those pages. Be sure to like and subscribe, and let's get right into it. First of all, liquidations, $500 million today. It has gone up quite a bit. Volatility has been increasing, and I do expect that is the case because I do still expect a massive inflection point for November, and most likely this week because we do have some nice inflection points happening right now. Liquidations, we have quite a bit of liquidations above us, all the way to that 106k key region. And when it comes to the charts, Ethereum to USD, Ethereum technically on the lower time frame basis is actually looking much more bearish than the Bitcoin. If you guys look, we're obviously retesting this major area as resistance that was once used as support. So it's technically a bearish retest, and usually these actually end up to the downside. But something to note is Bitcoin's looking the opposite right now. Bitcoin's actually holding out lower end of the bullish wedge. And as long as Bitcoin holds its lower end of the bullish wedge, I do expect a bounce to the upside. And if we do get that bounce to the upside and a break above, we can expect well into that 120k plus range. So specifically for this bullish wedge, the target is around that 125k key level area. When it comes to Total 3 broke down yesterday, and we're actually really trying to recover that area. As you guys can see, we had a bearish retest just a few hours ago. I would not be surprised we have another continuation down lower, but let's see where we go. Bitcoin is looking like it really wants to hold here, especially too because the crypto fear and greed index is already so low. We've had that 15 key region being hit once again, and if I go to the past year, as you guys can see, our lowest region for this year was actually 10, and that was like a brief dip to the downside. So as you guys can see, 27th of February, if we actually go back, the 27th of February, we're in, where was it? We were around, here. So we were at the 78k level, and we traded pretty much around the same prices for a month or so. But the key thing to look at is, as you guys can see, we made a marginal lower low later on, about a month and a half later. But looking at that fear and greed index, it actually made a higher low. So we want to see some fear and greed divergences happening. And if that is the case, we can expect a low to gain built. But I've told you guys so many times, generally these kind of fearful moments happen over a longer period. The bottoming formation does take a while. Going back to that wedge structure I showed you guys a few days ago on the fear and greed, as you guys can see, we're actually having another touch of the bottom range. So if I was to guess, we would actually have a bounce on this crypto fear and greed index chart in the next few days or so, which actually might line up with the government shutdown ending, maybe even the end of this week. So if that is the case, we can expect some bounces to the upside. If we, of course, were to break down below here, you're going straight to that 10 to 5 fear and greed level, which we can see some massive capitulations to happen. But based on probabilities, we do expect a bounce off its support level. Let's see if we can get a break above, because if we do see a break above for that fear and greed index, we can then see the market slowly going to the greed side, which of course means most likely Bitcoin is actually breaking above and altcoins are also breaking above. Next up is stock market. Stock market is still chugging along as usual, still holding our trend line. No real update to say there. But next up is base native token assets. The first update I want to show you guys, which is super important because of course Aerodrome is the lifeblood of base chain in my opinion. It is the #1 liquidity provisioning DEX on base chain, but something absolutely massive to show you guys is Velodrome and Aerodrome, which were basically sister projects, are now merging together. They're actually going to be called Aero And basically what the real update is to show you guys is technically Aerodrome is not going to be a base native DEX anymore. It's going to be on multiple chains. The main thing you got to look at is now is the DEX is going to be diluting its emissions and its incentives across the board, because of course they're going to be incentivizing multiple chains and a lot more projects now. So I do think base native DEXs on base chain, the smaller ones, especially Alien Base and HYDX, which I haven't actually showed on my YouTube channel, they're actually another 3-3 project, just like Aerodrome is. So when it comes to comparisons and competitors, HYDX is a direct competitor to Aerodrome, whereas base chain is going more the route of being a trading DEX experience. So based on the fact that Alien Base is #1 trading DEX experience and HYDX is a 3-3 meta DEX, I would not be surprised with Aerodrome merging. We can see some traction for Alien Base and HYDX. The most important thing to look at now is Aerodrome is technically leaving that base native narrative. It's not a base native DEX anymore. It's going to be a DEX across multiple chains. So when it comes to being bullish on base native protocols on base chain, really Aerodrome isn't base native anymore. And you need to look at other DEXs if you're obviously bullish on DEXs, and you want to be looking at the #1 base native DEXs on base chain if you're bullish on base chain. And look, Alien Base is the #1 DEX trading experience on base chain. And based on this news today, HYDX is now basically technically the #1 3-3 meta DEX on base chain, which is absolutely massive, because I do think inflows and rotation will happen from Aerodrome to the other base native DEXs, because of course people are bullish on base native things. They're not bullish on DEXs that are generic across different chains. Of course, it's not to say Aerodrome is going to dump, which is of course named Aero now. It's not going to dump because it's technically getting a much larger market share from different chains, but I do think that pool for base chain in general is now going to open up. Aero just has too many chains and protocols to worry about to really incentivize with its existing emissions. So I do expect HYDX emissions and Alien Base emissions to be much more competitive for new projects to onboard, and I will not be surprised their liquidity pools actually start gaining more volume because of that. But next up is Toshi. Of course, when it comes to Toshi, Toshi has been in a massive daily bullish divergence for basically the past 2 weeks or so. And we actually had a pop-up today. We had a massive pop-up into that major resistance area at the 5-6 area. And to be honest, we really need to break above this trend line ASAP, because this will actually confirm all of this as deviation. But as it stands right now, we're actually wicking. We tested this as resistance and now actually dumped down. But look, as it stands, we're still in that bullish divergence area, and I do expect continuation is to occur to the upside as long as bullish divergence is still holding. And we actually had a marginal lower low today, like I told you guys. This squiggly line has actually been holding quite well. But let's see if we actually get a break above. If you guys see a break above on Toshi after this video upload, and if it's actually confirming about that 5-5 region, I do expect continuation is to occur, because basically after this resistance level, there isn't much resistance until that major, about pretty much the 0.007 level. And let's see where we go. Still bullish on Toshi, still bullish on the #1 meme coin on base chain, and I would not be surprised we have a massive move for Toshi if Bitcoin really starts getting up and moving. Next up is tweets. So first tweet is by Psychedelic. Oh boy, the timeline is in utter shambles today. Frustration and depression and anger everywhere. It just means that 75k is next, then 50, and then 0, 100%, just down forever. This is what always happens after things like this. So of course, this is sarcasm. Fear and Greed Index is well into the teens range. Generally, once it gets this low, the bottom is in, if not maybe a marginal lower low. And just once again, the market sentiment is getting reset. It's getting completely flushed just before the final and most powerful move to the upside begins for Bitcoin, as well as our other altcoins. Next up is by TechDev. The record long pre-parabolic phase may finally be nearing its end. So another chart to look at is this business cycle chart. And as you guys can see, generally every time this trend line gets touched, we have a massive move to the upside. And really, as it stands, Bitcoin has not been in a parabolic move this whole time during this bull cycle. And before the end of every top to the cycle, we see a massive final parabolic move to the upside. We just had that touch. So if history is to repeat, for the next few months, we can expect that final move to the upside. And basically, November is the month to kickstart off that. If we don't see beyond 115k plus to Bitcoin for November, something else is probably playing out. We're going to have to just monitor the charts and relay to you guys what I will be saying. Because look, when it comes to Bitcoin, Bitcoin's inflection point is this month. This bullish wedge for Bitcoin is technically going to be breaking out or breaking down at the end of this month. So we do expect a massive move before then. Next tweet is by Semka. I really like the trend line we're climbing on the total threes. I wanted to give a few words myself. Not only is there a clear diagonal, it's also something to learn from. When you're not in full-blown price discovery, you'll most often come back down to retest local demand areas if you've left inefficient gaps. Open on the way up, surges with no stops, huge deal, that will improve your perception price action. So looking at the chart, basically this chart is so important to hold because as you guys can see, this trend line has basically been holding since basically the start of the total 3 bull market. As you guys can see, November 2023 was actually since the trend line has been made. And basically the verdict is, if we break down below this, that most likely the bear market is starting, but as long as we hold above, we do expect continuation to the upside to occur. And as you guys can see, this major 2021 high, all-time high, has been set as resistance, and we're technically in the major wedging pattern, and generally these wedging patterns do break out to the upside, and if we have a breakout to the upside, technically the target is the depth of the wedge, basically the length of his line. And if that is the case, look, we can expect beyond 2 trillion. Let's see where we go, because beyond 2 trillion would actually be absolutely massive. I do expect a breakout, but let's see if we actually get 2 trillion. I'm not sure if we'll get that. The market cap will be absolutely massive, and I might just not be bullish enough. But at the very least, I do expect a breakout to happen. I do expect a breakout of 2021 highs, as long as this trend line of the lows is held. Next up is by Income Sharks. Bitcoin was bearish when price was higher, now starting to get bullish as it's lower. Why? Because risk goes down as price goes down. We still have a chance to make a higher low at major support, and there's a lot of panic. So once again, we have major panic. Fear and greed is at 15. We're actually making a marginal higher low, which shows some divergence with the fear and greed, where the market is actually at its most fearful point ever since April, but we're actually holding a higher price than previously, which is quite bullish because the unbalanced volume is actually slowly trending up, and we're having those higher lows. So we do expect a continuation to happen to the upside. Let's see if we get that inflection point for this week where we see that government shutdown ending, because if that is the case, we're definitely going to retest that major 105k pivot point. Once that does happen, I do expect the confirmation of breaking out that wedge is to happen, which when we can expect 125k and beyond. So that's all to the video, guys. Hope you guys liked the video. Of course, when it comes to Aerodrome's news, it's absolutely massive. Because for one, yes, Aero is probably going to adopt much more inflows from different chains. Much more volume is coming to the Aero project. But it has opened up more possibilities for more larger DEXs on base chain, because Aero has dropped the possibilities of being the #1 base native DEX. It's not a base native DEX anymore. It's a multi-chain project, just like Uniswap and SushiSwap is. So when it comes to future narratives, Alien Base can technically be the #1 overall DEX on base chain. It's just opened the possibilities of that. It could also be HYDX, but as it stands right now, HYDX is the #1 3-3 meta DEX on base chain, and Alien Base is the #1 best trading DEX experience. So let's say we go, let's see how the TVL and volume goes around for these DEXs. Quite exciting times, because it just has opened up the opportunities for multiple competitors on base chain. Aerodrome has basically had a monopoly on the base chain. So let's see where we go, and let's see if it's actually bullish for our base native DEX tokens like Alien Base. And yeah, so that's all to the video, guys. Hope you guys liked the video. Be sure to like and subscribe, and comment down below if you have any questions. That's all to the video, guys. Have a good one. Have a good day. Peace.